Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, where we would try to comprehensively analyze 9 articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express. The first article is with respect to the importance and issues related to the Indian diaspora. The second article deals with the upcoming Digital Agriculture Mission. The third article deals with the concept of simultaneous elections in India. The fourth article is related to the National Education Policy 2020. The fifth article is related to the functioning of Central Information Commission. Finally, in the Prelims Snippet sections, we'll have a look at some of the important articles for the upcoming prelims exam. Now, the very first article deals with the Indian diaspora. So what we recently witnessed was the tragic fire incident in Kuwait, which claimed life of many people. And out of those, most of them were Indians. Now, this points towards the sorry state of affairs when it comes to the living conditions of these migrants. So what we'll study is what is the importance of Indian diaspora, what are the issues associated with them, and what can be the way forward. So this forms a part of GS2 Indian diaspora. Now see, when we talk about the word diaspora, it is derived from a Greek word known as diaspero. Diaspiro. Now this word actually means dispersion. Right. So this word diaspora is derived from the Greek word diaspero. Now see, if we define the Indian diaspora, how to define it? What we say is that these are the people who trace their origin to India or who are Indian citizens who live in different countries around the world, right? Either temporarily or permanently, right? So that is how we define the Indian diaspora. Now it can be actually classified in three ways. First is the non-resident Indians. The second is the persons of Indian origin. The third is the overseas citizens of India. So it was in the year 2015 that the government of India actually merged the PIO card holders and the OCI card holders into one single category. Now, if we talk about the numbers, so what we see is that the Indian diaspora is the world's largest. So according to the Ministry of External Affairs, what you see is there are more than 29 million people of Indian origin living in different countries around the world, right? Moreover, what we see is that it is incredibly diverse. That is, you have people of Indian origin belonging to different religions, belonging to different ethnicities, having different languages, right? So what it makes is these people, these Indian origin people as very diverse. Now, if you analyze the sort of origin of these Indian diaspora, it can be done into two phases, right? The first is that with respect to the colonial era, right? So we had the system of the British indentured labor system, right? So what British used to do is they used to sort of take a lot of Indians and they used to send them to different countries, different colonial occupations like Fiji, Mauritius, Caribbean islands, especially for working as cheap labor in different plantations, right? So that is how you saw that a lot of Indians were transported. The word is transported usually because there were very pathetic conditions, right? So through that, we developed the first system of this Indian diaspora. The second phase started after the independence, that is after 1947, when we saw that people, students, highly educated people or skilled professionals, they went to the countries like US, UK or other developed countries to secure better economic prospects, right? So that is how what we see the origin of Indian diaspora in the modern times. Now see, if we talk about the global distribution of the Indian diaspora, what we see is that it is geographically very vast. Look at the map. You will see that the Indians are almost present in all the countries, right? So USA, with a sort of the Indian diaspora population of more than 44 lakhs, that is 4 million, right? More than 4.4 million. And you must be surprised to know, and we all know that actually, that most of the people in the US, they are actually employed in some of the very technologically intensive jobs, right? And some of them are even a part of the government over there. So that is how we talk about the US. Next is UK. So we have got around 17 lakh people of Indian origin who are residing in United Kingdom, and they have some of the very established business enterprises in the United Kingdom. Then we have got West Asia. Now see, the topic of concern is West Asia, right? Now, before we talk about the West Asia, I'll like to give you some numbers. First is that the total number of Indian diaspora, or the Indian migrants in West Asia is around 10 to 12 million, right? And West Asia is a sort of a region which we all know that it is a sort of socially restricted region, right? And most of the countries in the Gulf, that is the West Asia, they are actually oil driven economies, right? Now, if you see that we have got countries like United Arab Emirates, we have countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon, right? Now, they have a huge chunk of their population as the Indian migrants, right? So, we have got the country of Saudi Arabia, where we have around more than 2.5 million people, more than 25 lakh people of Indian origin. Then we have got UAE, more than 34 lakh Indians, people of Indian origin, right? They are residing in UAE. Then we have the country, small country of Kuwait, which has more than 10 lakh people of Indian origin, right? Now, if you see that their share of population as a percentage of total population, the percentage of the total local population, you would see that these people of Indian origin, they constitute around 34.6% of the total local population in UAE. Same is the case with Saudi Arabia, significant 7.5%. Then we have got Kuwait, 24.1%. Then we have got Oman. Then we got Qatar, Bahrain, and then other countries. Now, before we go further, I want to put up a question. And the question is, can you just tell me that which is the smallest West Asian country? And if you know, please post in the comment section. Second question is that since we are talking about Kuwait, I want you to tell me that which are the two countries which share a land border with Kuwait. Two countries which share a land border with Kuwait. So give me that answer and post in the comment section. Now, see, then we have got the region of Southeast Asia. So over there we have got countries like Malaysia, where we have around 25 lakh people of Indian origin. Then we have got countries like Singapore, where we have got more than 10 lakh people of Indian origin, right? So that is how we see that the Indian diaspora is a geographically vast entity, and it's almost spread around the world. Now, if we talk about the importance of Indian diaspora, so we can actually study this phenomena at three fronts. The first is they act as cultural ambassadors. What do you mean by that? See, these are the people who are spread all around the world, and they carry with themselves the Indian traditions and culture in the form of food, music, languages, and that is then spread to different countries. So they are actually the ambassadors of India, right? And they promote the soft power of India. Soft power in terms of the music, the language, the sort of cuisines, right? So that is at the first front. Second is their economic contribution. Please understand that these migrants, majority of them, they send a huge chunk of money, which we call as remittances, the inward bound remittances, so that they can help their families to grow, right? Now, see, if you look at the personal level, they're helping their families. But if you look at the country level, what you see is that this inward bound remittance, it is helping India with increasing its forex reserves. And also it lowers down its current account deficit. So you just see in the picture given here, we have this sort of a data by the World Bank, which says that India was a country which received the highest amount of remittances, more than $125 billion in the year 2023. Then if you see at this graph, what you see is that there are three countries, that is US, UK and Singapore, which actually contribute to more than 35% of these remittances. Look at this: United States, United Kingdom and Singapore. At the second place comes the Gulf Cooperation countries, GCC countries, right? And out of these GCC countries, you have the country of United Arab Emirates, which almost contributes 18% of the total inward bound remittances. Now this is a huge number, right? So what we see is at the economic level also, they play a huge role. Third is that they act as a bridge between the nations. What do you mean by bridge? See, please understand that since the time they went to these countries and now they have actually, some of them have reached to very senior positions, influential positions in their government, in the businesses, and that is helping to promote the Indian interest. A case in point is the Indo-US civil nuclear deal, right, where the Indian diaspora helped to sort of make this pact, right? So that is the importance of these Indian diaspora. So next we talk about the issues with respect to this diaspora. So if we analyze on a journal level, the first is that of integration. See, please understand that once we have got these people, these sort of Indian migrants who go with their own traditions and customs to different countries, they face some sort of friction with that of the culture and traditions of the host countries. And then it leads to the problem of integration. And sometimes they have this feeling that they don't belong to anywhere. So that is the first thing. Second is discrimination. There have been cases where you see that still the people of Indian origin have been discriminated against on the basis of racism, on the basis of sort of having prejudices. So what we see is that there are attacks, and we have got the example in the US where people of Indian origin have been attacked in countries like Canada or in countries like Australia or in countries like sort of US. Then we have the issue of brain drain. See, please understand that, especially as we talked about, that after independence, many of the highly educated Indians or sort of highly skilled professionals, they migrated to these sort of countries. Now, it compromises the India's economic prospects or India's developmental prospects. Once you have got these people who are highly skilled and they are going to different countries, you are actually suffering from a loss, right? Next is family disruptions. Obviously, once you have got these people and they separate from their families, then you have got the problem of emotional stress, right? So that is also one of the issues. Next is, we are talking about specifically with respect to the West Asia. Now, before we talk about the West Asia, 2 points must be kept in mind. First is that majority of these Indian migrants to the West Asia, they are blue-collared workers. Blue-collared workers. That is, they are having low skills. It is characterized by sort of low-paying jobs. So, majority of them, they are blue-collared. Second is, please understand, when we talk about the West Asia, we must also take into account the social construct over there. We know that most of the countries in the West Asia, they are theocratic. So they have got rigid social norms. And over there, you have got the monarchies. So there, the concept of freedom sort of finds weakness. So if we talk about these countries, the issues with respect to these countries, the first is at the base level, that is at the level of recruitment stage. We have got many middlemen in India, right, who actually dupe these sort of people from low economic status and in the hope of giving better job opportunities in these countries like West Asia. But what happens is sometimes they dupe, they take the money through fraudulent means, and in the end what happens is that sometimes these people are forced into some of the very bad professions, right? So you actually sort of kill their hopes. Next is their vulnerability to the economic fluctuations. See, please understand that most of these migrants, they are employed in West Asia in those occupations which are economically vulnerable, where there is a huge scope of fluctuations. For example, oil and gas sector. So we witnessed this during the COVID period, that the demand of the oil and gas around the world, it was reduced. So it affected a large chunk of people working in these countries, right? So it also makes their job insecure. Financially, they are insecure, right? Next is limited labor rights, the system of kafala. See, please understand, in these countries, people have very limited labor rights, also limited social protection schemes. And over there, you have a system of kafala, which actually means that the employer dictates the terms of the agreement. And in many cases, the employer also dictates the personal choices of these migrants. So it becomes a very sort of brutal system, right? Then we have got unfair labor practices. What we see is that many of these migrants, they have been forced to work for long hours, poor working conditions, unhygienic conditions, right? There have been cases where there have been sort of instances of wage theft. So they have limited bargaining power. Then we have got this issue of that they are prone to exploitation, especially the women and the children. They are prone to sexual exploitation. They are prone to some other sort of heinous activities. So the next is the unsafe and undignified living condition. The case in point is that of the Kuwait, where numerous people were actually forced into a building and they were living together beyond the capacity of that building. So what it resulted into a loss of many lives, right? So what we see is that the living conditions are not good. Even the basic amenities are not provided, right? Now, what have been the government initiatives to engage with the Indian diaspora? See, please understand, we have this Overseas Citizenship of India scheme of 2005. Now, this scheme actually tries to sort of make the travel of these people to India in an unrestricted manner, and they can also participate in different economic activities, for example opening bank accounts or buying property, right? So as to facilitate their interaction with India. Next is the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. So it aims to sort of connect these Indian diaspora with the Indians at large. Next is we have got the ECR category, that is immigration check required category status. See, we have got some of the countries, and right now the number is 18, where you have the passports as ECR or non-ECR. For the ECR, we have got 18 countries where you need to require a mandatory ECR sort of certification. Now, what it means is that there are some countries where you have got the conditions of the migrants not very good, right? So we need to have this ECR certification, and on the basis of that ECR certification, what we have is the Pravasi Bharatiya Bima Yojana. Now, this is an insurance scheme which is mandatory for those people who are traveling to ECR category countries, right? Next is we have got the Indian Community Welfare Fund. See, this is a fund under the Ministry of External Affairs. Now, this fund actually sort of helps those people who are in distress, right? So it provides sort of financial help to those people who are in distress situation. Now, we saw that these workers, especially in the West Asia, they're suffering from a lot of problems, right? So what can be the way forward? See, the first is that we need to strengthen the legal framework. We have got the Immigration Act of 1980s, right? Now, this is almost 40 years old. We need to have a sort of a more robust legal framework, which is more aligned to the interest of these workers, right? And not to the interest of what the government thinks, government of those host countries, right? So we need to sort of make these legal framework more robust. Next is the migration database. Without having a proper database, we really cannot make effective policies. What is needed is that we need to collect data sources from different places on the conditions of these migrants, on the living conditions in these host countries, so that we can make effective policies. Then there needs to be bilateral agreements should incorporate clear guidelines on worker protection. Let's say if India is sort of having a bilateral agreement with Kuwait or Qatar or Bahrain or any country, we need to incorporate this clause that, see, we are having a lot of Indians who are working in your country, who are contributing to your economic development. So at least provide a basic minimum level of protection to these workers. That needs to be incorporated. Next is the social protection schemes. As I said, that there is a need to provide social insurance or sort of other types of cushioning services to these people, so that they don't face these sort of bad conditions. Next, the dignified living conditions. These people need to be provided. The employer who are sort of exploiting these laborers, they need to at least provide the basic minimum level of amenities to these people so that they can be sort of more productive. So what we see is that definitely there are issues, and there are serious issues. That's the reason we witnessed such a tragic incident in Kuwait. So we need to have proper policies. Both the sending countries and the host countries both need to evolve proper strategies and make sure that these workers who are actually leaving their families and going to distant places, they need to be made more productive. How you can do so? By providing them with adequate minimum basic level of rights, with basic amenities, right? More so that they are also contributing economically to India, right? So India needs to sort of have their rights clearly placed before the host countries, so that we can ensure that the Indian diaspora, it actually blooms and it acts as a real sort of cultural ambassador to India, and it thrives and lives in good conditions. Now, coming to the next article, we have got the upcoming digital agriculture mission. So the cabinet is planning to implement this mission primarily to promote the digitalization of the Indian agriculture. Now, this is with respect to GS3 Indian agriculture. Now, what is digitalization of agriculture? What do you mean by it? See, what it means is, it means the integration of these cutting edge technologies. For example, the artificial intelligence, for example, the robotics. For example, we have got the aviation systems like drones, right? So the integration of these technologies into the farm production system is known as the digitalization of agriculture. Now, why is this important for India? See, please understand. First, talk about the Indian agriculture. So let's talk about the role of agriculture in the Indian economy. See, the share of agriculture in the Indian economy in the year 2023, financial year 23, was around 18.3%, right? So that is very much sort of important. Second is that it is one of the largest sort of employment source. That is almost 42% of the labor force is employed in the agri services, right? Next is importance in international trade. In the financial year 2023, agriculture, sort of agri exports, the value of the agri exports was almost $53 billion, right? Next is that it aims to sort of provide the food security to more than 1.4 billion people, right? Then it helps in the creation of capital formation. Then it provides raw materials to different industries. So agriculture itself is very, very important for India. So what we need is that we need to digitalize this agriculture so as to make it more productive, so as to make it more efficient. So that is the reason that the government is focusing on the digitalization of agriculture in India. Now, how to do that? See, we have got the systems like drone technologies, what we call the digitalization of agriculture, also as the smart agriculture. Right. So when you sort of incorporate or include the technologies in the agriculture, we also call it the smart agriculture. So we have got the drone technology, we have got the Internet of Things and cloud computing, we have got the software applications, we have got the wireless sensor networks, we have got the AI powered robots, we have got the data analytics solutions. So these are some of the technologies which can be integrated into the farm production systems. Now see, this mission in particular, digital agriculture mission, it was actually initially planned in the year 2021-22, but it was actually it could not take off because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that's the reason that the government is focusing to sort of implement this digital agriculture mission now. Now see, pilots projects are already being undertaken under this project. We have got some of the 6 districts in some states, for example Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, where you have got these pilots projects going on, and on the basis of these studies, what we'll see is the furthering of the mission. Now, primarily the components of this mission are 2. The first is farmers registry. What do you mean by farmers registry? See, this aims to provide a farmer with a unique ID, right? It would give a sort of a unique ID, as we have got the system of Aadhaar, right? So it would give a sort of unique ID to a particular farmer, and that through that unique ID, the farmer can actually use different value-based services, agri services. Also, he can use this unique ID for the PM Kisan benefits or PM Fasal Yojana benefits, right? Moreover, this ID can be used by the farmer to avail loans, to avail different social protection schemes, right? Next is, we have got the crop sown registry. What do you mean by it? So it will have a data of the crops which are sown by the farmer. Now, what sort of help it would give is that it would give us sort of a data with respect to the what kinds of crop are sown, so that we can have a better planning and estimation of the cropping patterns, right? So that is what the components of digital agriculture mission are. Now, let's talk about the prospects in general of digitalizing the Indian agriculture. See, first of all, it leads to increased productivity of the agriculture. How? See, we have got this system, digital tools like sort of the sensors, or using robotics or information technology. Now, this optimize the resource use. For example, we have got water. For example, we have got fertilizers. Once you use these technologies, we actually optimize the usage, and then it also increases the crop yield. We also have a data from the National Council of Applied Economic Research, which says that the digital interventions in the Indian agriculture, they are supposed to increase the agriculture productivity in India by 10 to 15% till the year 2030, right? This is a research-based work by the National Council of Applied Economic Research. Then it also leads to enhanced market access. See, please understand that once you have got technologies like e-commerce platform, we have got one of the very important sort of platforms, that is e-NAM, that is e-National Agriculture Market. Now, it tries to sort of integrate the sort of farmer with that of the consumer. So once you have got a direct connection, it leads to 2 benefits. First, it leads to reduction in the post-harvest losses, because you will have the timely selling of these products. Second is that it provides the farmer with the bargaining power. It fetches him good price. So these are some of the advantages. Now, we have got the CII data, Confederation of Indian Industries data, which says that in the last 3 years, what we saw was the 100% increase in the number of agri platforms providing agri products. on the e-commerce platform, right? So that is how the expansion of these platforms is taking place. Next is it leads to improved farm management. See, please understand. Once you have got these technologies which provide you sort of with weather alerts, which provides you sort of climate alerts or pest alerts, it makes the system more sort of effective. The management of the farm becomes more effective and it leads to greater returns for the farmer in particular, right? So that is how it helps in improved farm management. Then we have got sustainable practices. It enhances or encourages sustainable practices. See, as I said, that if you have got these sensors in place which optimize the resource use, for example, if it gives you the information that you have to use limited water for that particular crop, or which crop to grow in a particular area based on the data analytics. So it promotes a more climate smart agriculture, more sustainable agriculture, right? But there are some deep challenges. What are the challenges with respect to the digitalization of Indian agriculture? The first and foremost is the digital divide. Please understand that a majority of farmers, especially the small and marginal farmers, they lack these digital resources. They lack the capacity to buy these digital resources. Some of them don't even have a smartphone, let alone the internet connectivity. So what you see is that, and also the NSSO data, it says that almost 23.8% of the rural households in India, they don't have the sort of internet connectivity. National Sample Survey Organization's data, right? So what we see is that there is a dearth of these applications or these products with these small and marginal farmers. Moreover, they are not digitally literate. There is a widespread digital illiteracy among these people. Next is affordability of technology. They cannot afford these technologies. So what becomes important is that government needs to sort of interfere, right? Government needs to provide these services, right? Even if you have got such wide applications of these services, if the farmers are unable to sort of buy them, it's of no use, right? Next is data security and privacy. Then there are issues of related to data sort of usage and sharing. Some of the farmers, they're reluctant to share their data with others. We also have, you already know that this right to privacy in India has been gaining prominence, and it was in 2017 that you had this Honorable Supreme Court of India declaring the right to privacy as a fundamental right. Can you just tell me under which article of the Indian Constitution the Supreme Court of India declared right to privacy as a fundamental right? Please post in the comment section. So what we see is then we have got the lack of infrastructure. See, please understand, even if you have proper digital tools in place, and if you don't have power lines, if you don't have adequate power supply, if you don't have sort of the infrastructure needed for these digital tools, there is no use. So what we see is that there is lack of sort of power lines or cold storage or storage facilities for these digital tools, right? So there is a problem over there. Now, what is the way forward? What can be the way forward? See, first is that the government needs to have more initiatives so that it can promote the digital literacy. There is a need. We already have some of the many programs, digital Saksharta Abhiyan, right? So government needs to sort of make it more robust. Then there is a need for more subsidies for these technologies. Government needs to provide financial incentives for these technologies to different farmers so they can easily adopt. For example, we have got the digital Krishi portal. So apps need to be developed in the local languages so that language barrier can be resolved. Then we have got the public-private partnerships. The government needs to sort of integrate the technical companies, the technology companies. Government needs to integrate the NGOs. Government needs to integrate the agri startups so that there can be a development of more affordable and accessible products, digital products. Then there needs to be a focus on the local languages. India is a diverse country. We have got thousands of languages. So there's a need that if you develop these apps or something, there should be a sort of integration of local languages into those apps. Then investing in rural infrastructure. As I said, there's a need for the government. There's a need for the power supply lines. There's a need for adequate internet connectivity platforms. There's a need for adequate storage sort of options. So government needs to invest in rural infrastructure. So what we see is definitely digitalization of agriculture is something which can enhance the productivity and sort of efficiency of Indian agriculture at large. But there are deep challenges, and the government needs to have a multi-pronged approach, right? So that ultimately we have a very blooming agriculture, Indian agriculture, and that results into the sort of the getting that aim, realizing the aim of doubling the farmer's income, right? So that is how we need to proceed. So the next article is with respect to the National Education Policy of 2020. See, we know that the aspirations of this policy are too big and too ambitious. But what we see is that this is it is facing a lot of challenges in the implementation part. And those challenges are sort of in different domains. So what we see is that there is a need to reform the sort of policy measures so that it can be more in line with the objectives of the national education policy. So it forms a part of GS2, social sector education. Now see, what is the sort of basis of the national education policy of 2020? See, it seeks to tackle the evolving developmental needs of India, right? So that we can have a sort of a comprehensive overhaul of the education system in India, including its regulation and management, right? So it also includes the regulation and management, and also to make it more aligned to the needs of the 21st century, right? To the needs of the 21st century, where we see a dominance of the Industrial Revolution 4, right, which is marked with technologies like artificial intelligence, robotics. So what we see is that it is more aligned to the aspirations of the 21st century, and also it strives to fulfill the goal of the Sustainable Development Goal of 4, that is quality education, right? So these are the sort of objectives. Now, if we talk about the exact objectives of the policy, what we see is that the first objective is to create a learner-centric teaching. That is, it is aligned to the needs of the learner and it is not sort of imposed on the learner. Second is that it is a discussion-based teaching, so that it becomes more participatory and it is not a sort of a monologue, right? Next is delivering value-based education, that is incorporating or including the human values in the education system. Then we have got developing multidisciplinary skills in thinkers, that is having this critical approach, having this ability to analyze a particular topic in different dimensions. Then we have got developing creativity so as to further innovation, right? Developing discovery-oriented teaching so as to promote the research, both the social research and the scientific research. Then we have got developing the critical thinking so as to promote the rationality, right? So that you can able to analyze a particular thing rationally. Then we have got developing the decision making so as to make the student sort of capable to have an informed decision, right? So these are the objectives. Now, what are the salient features of the national education policy? First is that it strives to have universal access, that is universalization of the secondary education. It strives for that. Second is that it tries to shift to a system of 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 system. That is, presently we are sort of having this 10 plus 2 system. So it strives to go to this system of 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, where we focus upon the early childhood care and education, right? So that is the focus of this policy. Then it also focuses upon the multilingualism, that is the instructions, the teaching should be in the regional languages, that is the mother tongue of the particular candidate. Then it also strives for inclusive education. What do you mean by inclusive education? That is, it is focusing on that strata, that is socially and educationally disadvantaged groups. So the children from these backgrounds, they have to be catered specially. Then it also strives to enhance the gross enrollment ratio from something 26% to 50% by 2035 to increase the gross enrollment ratio. Next is it focuses upon the research. How? By establishing the National Research Foundation, which focuses on both the social research and the scientific research, right? Next is it also focuses upon language preservation, that is to promote the sort of vulnerable languages, indigenous languages, right? Then it also focuses upon the internationalization, that is to collaborate with the top ranked foreign universities and institutes around the world so that their learnings can be incorporated into the Indian education system. Then it also strives for enhanced funding, that is to enhance the funding to around 6% of the GDP in the Indian education. Then it also strives for creating a national assessment sort of center mechanism, and that is PARAK, which actually means the performance analysis, review, and the analysis of knowledge for holistic development. That is the PARAK. Then it also strives for gender inclusion fund. That is, it is trying to promote the equality among the genders, right? Then there is a concept of special education zones, that is focusing upon those groups or those regions which are actually behind in the educational parameters, on the educational parameters. So that is what the objective or the criteria, or sorry, the salient features of these of this policy is all about. Now, what are the prospects if this sort of scheme, if this policy is implemented fully to its full potential? What are the prospects? First is that it would lead to holistic development, that is beyond the rote learning, and it would emphasize the critical reasoning, the critical sort of analysis of the student, right? It also prepares the student for the complexities in the 21st century. I already told you that right now we are witnessing the Industrial Revolution 4.0, which is marked by different technologies characterized by artificial intelligence. We already saw this, see this ChatGPT and Gemini and everything. So in order to make the student sort of well comfortable with these technologies, it strives to do that. Next is that it focuses upon the equity and inclusion. That is, irrespective of the background of the candidate, the policy tries to create a level playing field for everyone by promoting the early childhood care and education. Now, there have been research which points towards that if we focus well upon the early childhood care and education, there is a sort of better comprehension, better understanding. It develops into a better cognitive development of the candidate itself. Next is focus on the mother tongue instructions. We already know that majority of the children in India, they are from diverse they have diverse regional languages, right? So we need to provide the education instructions. The language of the education should be in their own regional sort of languages, so that they can have more comprehension, right, ability. Then it seeks to expand the right to education of 2009. See, right now we have this right from 6 to 14 years of age. This tries to increase it to 18 years, right? So that is what it does. Next is that it focuses upon the skill developmental aspect. See, it is trying to integrate the vocational education into the mainstream education, right? So that the children acquire the industry relevant skills and they can at appropriate time join the industries and contribute economically, right? Also, according to the World Bank, what we see is that World Bank did a study and came to the conclusion that the future jobs which would require some skills, so the current system in India, it fails to actually even provide 25% of those skills, right? So what we need to focus upon is that we need to provide those skills to these students, so that they ultimately they can employ themselves, they can be a part of the economic structure with proper skills. Next is, it also tries to empower the teachers, right? That is ultimately it is the teachers, right? They are the teachers are the one who actually guide you, who actually guide every one of us. And on that basis, what we do is we actually align our goals and aspiration. So it proposes a 4-year integrated B.Ed course so that it can make this system of teacher empowerment or sort of teacher participation more robust. Now, what are the challenges when it comes to sort of this national education policy? First is the implementation hurdles itself. See, what we see is that the policy is trying to have a target of having 6% funding, 6% of the GDP as funding. Now, this for a country like India, where we have got different priorities, this is something which is very tough. So what happens generally is that the government tries to sort of use the private resources. Now, once you have got the usage of private resources, it automatically increases the cost of education, right? So that is a very big sort of hurdle. Next is that it requires a strong political will, and not just at the level of union, because ultimately it is the states, it is the local authorities who are handling a lot of these students. So a very strong political will is needed. Then we have got effective collaboration. Most of these policies, they are top down. They are not sort of a bottom-up approach. So what we see is there's lack of collaboration. There's lack of effective participation, right? Next, as I said, funding constraints. Money has to come, and the government has to think that which are the priority sectors and how to actually accumulate these resources. Next, teacher training and recruitment. Please understand, teachers are at the base of the policy implementation, right? So as the National Council of Teacher Education also said, that we need to first actually strengthen the role of the teachers. We need to equip them with proper skills, with proper training, so that they are the ones who actually percolate, who actually trickle down that information to the students. Then shifting mindset. See, it is not just the student. We need to make sure that the community, the parents, they also sort of transition to a thinking level, to a sort of a mechanism where they focus upon the critical analysis mode and not on the rote learning, right? So what can be the way forward? See, first is we need to have a phased implementation. It should not be like, you make a policy today and you implement the other day. That should not be done. What we see is that there needs to be a clear roadmap for a phased implementation with defined timelines, that these targets are to be met with proper timelines. Next, it also needs to have collaborative efforts. That is, you need to include the views of the state governments, the local educational boards, and then you need to come with a policy measure. Then there's a need for decentralized planning. As I said, different regions have their different sort of priorities and needs. So we really cannot have a one size fits all approach. What we need is that different regions are having sort of their inputs in the policy, and accordingly we plan out a course for them. Next is that we need to focus on the public-private partnerships. That is, we need to utilize or leverage the expertise of the private sector, the expertise of the NGOs, right, who are interacting. The prime example is Pratham, right? So we have got, which publishes the report known as the Asar report, right? So we need to leverage the sort of capabilities these NGOs or these private institutions have. Next is there needs to be a community engagement. So as I said, it's not just about sort of making the students sort of having this critical reasoning or something like that. Parents, the community, the society at large needs to understand that there is a need for transitioning from this rote-based learning to a more different approach, to an approach which focuses upon sort of reasoning, which focuses upon developing the aptitude, which focuses upon developing the capacity to analyze things, right? So that is what we need to sort of understand. So finally, what we are trying to say is that, see, the aspirations of national education policy are too high, too ambitious, and definitely we are striving to work upon that. But there are some implementation challenges. There are challenges with respect to the states at large. There are challenges with respect to the different regions. So what we need to have is a more differentiated approach, a more sort of an approach which is based on the needs of the people rather than a top-down approach, right? So that is how we can make sure that the objectives or the aspirations of the national education policy are realized. So the next topic is with respect to the simultaneous elections in India. So what we saw in March 2024 was that the high-level committee, which was headed by the sort of former president of India, Ramnath Kovind, it submitted its report and it favored sort of simultaneous elections in India, and it submitted the report to the Honorable President of India, Draupadi Murmu. Now, the law ministry is actually thinking of submitting these proposals to the cabinet so that we can have a quicker transition towards this concept of simultaneous elections in India. Now, this forms a part of GS2 elections. Now, see, what does simultaneous elections actually mean? See, it refers to the idea of holding the elections to the House of the People, that is the Lok Sabha, and the state legislative assemblies elections together, so that we can sort of make the elections more efficient, and we can also reduce the funding, right? So that is what the idea of simultaneous elections is all about. Now, see, it's not like that this is a very new idea. It was initially practiced once India got its independence. It was practiced, and we had the elections, the general elections in 1952, then 57 and 62, where you had the simultaneous elections. But slowly the system of simultaneous elections started to break away. The reason was that because of the political instability and because of the dissolution of the many of these state assemblies, you had this sort of breakage of the simultaneous elections in India. And as of now, in 2024 general elections, what we saw that there were only 4 states, that is Andhra Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh, Odisha, and Sikkim, which had their elections in sync with the general elections, right? Now, see, we already had a lot of sort of recommendations by different committees. So we have got this pictorial representation. So it was by Niti Aayog. So a 2016 paper, which was co-authored by Vivek D. Broy. So what they said is that separate elections lead to massive recurring expenditure as well as prolonged deployment of forces. So it suggested holding elections in 2 cycles with an interregnum of 30 months, right? Then what we saw is that the standing committee also gave its recommendation, and it said that the House panel on the personal public grievance and the law and justice said that the elections could be held in 2 phases. Moreover, polls to some assemblies can be held in the Lok Sabha midterm. Remaining assemblies could be held at the end of the Lok Sabha term. Then we had this Law Commission report of 1999, which said that the elections holding simultaneous polls would be ideal, but a workable solution is required to be in the constitution. Then the holding of separate elections to the assembly should be an exception and not the rule. Another law panel report in 2018 said that simultaneous polls don't alter balance of power between the union and the states. So these are some of the views of different committees or commissions, right? So that can be helpful for you if you write in the mains exam. Now, this committee, a very high level powered committee, this recommended, and few of the recommendations are given here. So it first talked about the insertion of Article 82A. That is, it talks about the appointed date which is to be declared by the President of India for the commencement of the simultaneous elections, Lok Sabha. Then it also states that the states with elections due between June 2024 and May 2029 would see their terms expire alongside the 18th Lok Sabha. What we see is, what it's trying to say is that even if sort of the terms of these state legislative assemblies, they are less than 5 years, they would expire. Then conducting fresh elections only for the remaining term and not the full term. Synchronization of local body elections. So it has recommended sort of insertion of Article 324A, right? So that we can have the elections to the municipalities and the panchayats synchronized with the elections to the House of the People, that is the Lok Sabha, and the state legislative assemblies. Then it also talks about electoral roll preparation and management. We have the electoral photo identity card. So it says that the Article 325 needs to be amended so that we can have a common elector photo identity card for all the 3 tiers of the elections. So these are some of the broad sort of recommendations. Now, let's talk about the arguments in favor of simultaneous elections. The first and the foremost argument which is given by the commentators is that it is cost efficient, that it would reduce the sort of substantial recurring expenditure. We know that the Indian democracy is recurrent with the festivals of elections. Sometimes you have the general elections after every 5 years. Then you have got the state elections. More or less 2-3 state elections are there almost every sort of year. Now this leads to the problem of recurrent and heavy expenditure, right? So the prime objective, prime reasons why the committee or different sort of the people who want the simultaneous elections want this is that they think that the simultaneous elections would reduce this excess burden, financial burden. It also minimizes the cost. As I said, it minimizes costs with respect to the election conducting procedures. Then it says that once you have got the simultaneous election, it would result in enhanced governance and administration. See, we have got, once the elections start, we have got the transfer of numerous people from one place to the other. Now that also leads to a situation which is also known as policy paralysis, because the people, the administrators who are actually running different policies, they are made to sort of go from one place to the other, and their focus is on the election duties and not the work, right? So it minimizes their duty with respect to the public, right? It reduces the strain on the governance once you have got the simultaneous elections. Enhanced national security and law enforcement. We already know that once we have got the elections, we have the deployment of numerous, especially the central armed police forces in different elections. Now, their primary task is to sort of make sure that we have got a very strengthened internal security, right? And also the border security. But once you use these people for conducting elections in India, the basic objective loses out, right? Next is reduce influence of money in politics. Now, once it is being said that once you will have simultaneous elections, the money sort of power in the elections would automatically reduce because there would be reduced frequency of election campaigns. Then mitigation of divisive politics. We already know. We know how sort of what the politicians in India do once they are sort of carrying on their speeches, right? So what it is trying to say is that once you have got the simultaneous elections in India, it would reduce the sort of emphasis of these politicians to casteism, to communalism, to divisive politics, right? And it would be more focused upon the national issues and promote a unified electoral agenda. That is what on the basis of the developmental politics, right? Then it would also lead to enhanced voter engagement, and it would reduce the voter fatigue. That almost every year we have got elections and we are in this phase of elections. So once you have got proper elections at a proper time interval, we'll have people would be able to focus on more on their activities, and they will not have to focus upon these elections. Now, what are the arguments against these simultaneous elections? See, the first and the foremost is that it undermines the federalism and the regional representation. See, as I said, that different states have different needs, right? Some states are advanced economically, some states are lagging behind, right? Now, this is just economically. Some states have sort of very bad social parameters, some states have good social parameters. So, what it is trying to say is that once you have a sort of a common election for whole of the country, it would reduce the sort of participation of the regional political parties. It would lower down the importance of the regional issues. That is what it is trying to focus upon. Next is it would require a significant initial investment. Obviously, if you are having simultaneous elections too, and this is the committee, it's talking about also synchronizing the local elections. So just imagine the amount of electronic voting machines you need, the number of the voter verifiable paper audit trail you need, VVPAT machines you need. So initially it would require a huge investment. Then see, even if you have got simultaneous elections to House of the People, to legislative assemblies, to the panchayats and municipalities, please understand that the elections to the legislative councils and the Rajya Sabha, they would be held separately, and over there you would also need resources. So that is a point of concern. Now, next is it would impact accountability and representation. Once you have got elections at different points of time, at least for the namesake, these political leaders, they try to sort of become more accountable. Right. So if you have only elections after 5 years, it would reduce the accountability of these politicians, these leaders to the people. Next is security implications. If you'll have elections, single election for a whole of the country, both at the House of the People, for the legislative assemblies, then what you would see is that a large number of security agencies and security people would be required, and it might compromise the national security. Right. So these are the arguments against the simultaneous elections. Now, what should be the way forward? See, the first and the foremost is that we should not sort of implement it directly all over the country. There needs to be sort of pilot projects in few states. And on the basis of those pilot projects, we can have our own learning, and then we can make the changes we need to make. Right. Next is we need to promote transparency in political funding. See, the paradox is that definitely conducting elections in India, it requires huge resources. But when you compare those resources with the kind of the expenditure the political parties are making, it's nothing, right? So rather than focusing upon the expenditure incurred by the state, please focus upon the expenditure, that too the black money which is being used in having these political campaigns, right? Thousands of crores of rupees are used in these elections. So we need to focus upon that. Also, we have got the VORA committee, which actually emphasized on the nexus between the corporates, right, between the politicians and between these industries, right, the criminals, right. So it actually looked into the nexus between the politicians, the corporates and the criminals, right. So please, you can quote this report in your mains answer also. So we need to promote the transparency in the political funding itself. Next is we need to have a political consensus. See, it should not be like that a single party at the national level or a coalition at the national level, it is deciding for all these states. You have got regional parties as well. You need to have a consensus, right? And probably we would see that. So we need to have a consensus with respect to these simultaneous elections. Then we need to implement staggered terms for state legislature. We can have this proposal where you first implement a staggered term for different state legislature, and then with time you can proceed towards the simultaneous elections. Moreover, we need to focus upon the enhanced public awareness. People need to be made aware about the sort of the advantages or the disadvantages of holding simultaneous elections, so that a proper public discussion takes place, and then we can reach to a conclusion. So that is what we need to do, that we need to sort of make a provision where the different sort of views of people are incorporated, and then we actually reach to this decision, right? So just we need to make sure that simultaneous elections, if they are sort of being thought to be implemented in India, then it requires a consensual approach, right? And not a top-down approach. So before we proceed to the next article, we have got a mains question which came in 2017. So the question says, simultaneous elections to the Lok Sabha and the state assemblies will limit the amount of time and money spent in electioneering, but it will reduce the government's accountability to the people. Discuss. So please write an answer on this based on what we have discussed, right? Next is a question of prelims, and this is also from 2017. So it says, consider the following statements. The Election Commission of India is a 5-member body. Union Ministry of Home Affairs decides the election schedule for the conduct of the both general elections and the by-elections. Election Commission resolves the disputes relating to the splits, mergers of recognized political parties. So the option, which of the following statements given above is or are correct? 1 and 2, 2 only, 2 and 3 only, or 3 only, right? So post your answer in the comment section below. So the next article deals with the Central Information Commission. So recently what we observed is that the Rashtrapati Bhavan, it actually gave a response to an RTI query. And the query was that how many times the former President Ramnath Kovind, he actually returned any decision taken by the Council of Ministers. So what we see is that the Central Information Commission has sort of upheld the response which is given by the Rashtrapati Bhavan. So it becomes important for us to study about this body. Now we have got this syllabus, a part of the syllabus as the GS2, statutory, regulatory and various quasi-judicial bodies. Now, see, the Central Information Commission. See, it was actually established under the provisions of the Right to Information Act of 2005. Therefore, it is a statutory body and it is not a constitutional body. So remember that. Now, it implements the Right to Information Act, where everybody is entitled sort of to seek information related to public offices. Now, before we talk about this, there's a very important case law which I would like to mention, and that is the PUCL versus Union of India 2005. Now, it was in this case that the Honorable Supreme Court, it declared that we have got the freedom of speech and expression under Article 19. It said that article also includes within its ambit the right to question the public authorities. And it was on the basis of that judgment that ultimately we had this Right to Information Act. So, what we see is that it, as I said, that it implements the RTI Act and it looks into the complaints and then decides on the appeals. Like if anyone is having a grievance, so the person can submit his or her grievance to the commission and then the commission takes appropriate action. So it is composed of a Chief Information Commissioner and not more than 10 Information Commissioners, right? Now, these are appointed by the President on a recommendation of a committee. Now, this committee is composed of the Prime Minister, right? Then it composed of leader of opposition, right? And it is composed of a cabinet minister, right? So remember this. Now, see, how can the member of the CIC be removed? That is the Central Information Commission. So the Chief Information Commissioner or the Information Commissioners can be removed by the President of India, right? If he feels that, let's say, the member is of unsound mind, or if he's an adjudged insolvent. So there are provisions in the sort of statutory law itself, and on the basis of those provisions, the President can sort of remove the particular member. Now, see, we had a very important amendment which was made in 2019 to the Right to Information Act. Now, this significantly sort of altered the power structure, and what it did is that it made changes in the tenure of the office. Previously, the tenure was fixed as of 5 years. But right now, the central government can determine the tenure of the Chief Election Commissioner or the other Information Commissioners. Next is that previously, the salaries of the Chief Information Commissioner was equivalent to the Chief Election Commissioner, and that of the Information Commissioners was equivalent to the Election Commissioners. But now it is the central government who decides the salaries of these, the Chief Information Commissioner and the Information Commissioners. It also removed the sort of deduction in the salary which was previously provided, that there would be some deductions. So it removed those deduction criteria. Now, what are the powers with respect to the Central Information Commission? The first is that it can sort of suo motu on its own order an inquiry. If it's found that a particular grievance has not been addressed, if there are some loopholes in the information delivery mechanism, it can order an inquiry. Then, while inquiring, the Commission has the powers of a civil court. What do you mean by that? That it can summon any evidence. right? It has the power. It can call for the affidavits. It can call for any sort of the witness, right? So these are the powers of civil court. Commission may also examine any record that is under the control of any public authority. That is, it may call for any public record, right? And then it can look into those records and reach to a conclusion. Commission also has a power to secure compliance of its decisions. It also can ask a public authority, if it is not sort of conforming to the regulations which are sort of made in the Right to Information Act, it can ask a public authority to conform to it, right? So these are the powers. Now, what are the issues with respect to the Central Information Commission? The first and the foremost is there is a lack of transparency in the selection process, right? You have the committee which is dominated by the government. So previously also, what used to happen is that the tenure was fixed. Right now, it is the government which decides the tenure. It is the government which decides the salary. So it is being alleged that the appointments are sort of made according to the whims and fancies of the government. Next is that there are huge vacancies in the Central Information Commission. There are a lot of vacant spaces for the information commissioners. Then there is delay in the disposal of the appeals and complaints. There have been people who have been repeatedly submitting sort of applications to the commission, but the commission is reluctant to provide adequate information. Then there is poor quality of information provided. The CPIOs, Central Public Information Officers, they are sort of lagging. They don't have adequate sort of information management practices, and they don't give information on a timely basis. Though it is required statutorily, by law it is required, but they are not providing the adequate information. Then there is a lack of capacity building. Even these people who are manning these information sort of departments, they are not having adequate capacity to manage the data, right? And to provide data in a timely manner. Then there is poor record management practices. As I said, that the practices used to sort of compile data to submit in proper electronic format are missing. Now, what can be the way forward? First is, see, rather than sort of making a person to come and give an information, there needs to be a proactive disclosure of the information on the websites of different sort of government authorities or autonomous institutions. There needs to be a proactive information dissemination, right? The vacancies need to be filled. We need to keep in mind that these are the bodies which are sort of protect the rights of the people, right? So if you don't have got people on these positions, there is no use. Digitization and record management. See, this is the time that we need to first, government is focusing upon the DigiLocker and other things, right? So it needs to make sure that its own data is first digitized, right? So that a proper information dissemination can take place, a timely information dissemination can take place. Then we need to raise awareness. People are not even aware about the information rights they have. So people need to be first made aware about the rights they have under the Right to Information Act. Then we need to ensure that there is proper protection to the whistleblowers. There have been cases where the people of some of the departments, they tried to sort of bring to the fore the loopholes in the system, and they were sort of brutally murdered. So there needs to be adequate protection to these whistleblowers. So what we see is that this right to information is very important for strengthening the democracy in order to promote the transparency and make sure that transparency should be the norm. As the Honorable Supreme Court said, secrecy should be an exception, not the other way around, right? So that we can ensure that these institutions which provide which strengthen the rights of the people are made more robust, and it can ensure a more effective citizen participation. Now, coming to the Prelims Snippet section, we have got the first topic as Kavali Prize. So it has been said that the Kavali Prize will be awarded this year. Now, this is given in the honor of the Norwegian American businessman and philanthropist Fred Kavali, right? So this person, he was working as an engineer in one of the pressure dynamic sensor systems in company, and then he started his own enterprise. So in 1958, he started his own enterprise, and it was named as Kavilco. Now it is a leading manufacturer of pressure sensors and related systems. Then in 2000, Kavali sold his company and established the Kavali Foundation, right? And this foundation is actually, it encourages the people from three domains, that is astrophysics, nanoscience, and neuroscience, right? So it tries to sort of give funding to these institutes which focus upon these three areas. So it foundation runs 20 institutes in these 3 areas. The Kavli prizes are awarded in 3 areas. As I said, the first is astrophysics, the second is nanoscience, and third is neuroscience. Sometimes this award is actually sort of compared with the Nobel prizes, right? So it is said that the Kavli prize is nothing but a sort of a Nobel prize in these 3 domains, right? But it is, make sure that it is not a sort of a part of the Nobel Prize. It is very much different from that. So a prize comprises of $1 million cash prize, a scroll, and a medal. So you can see it is the Kavli Prize, and we have got in 3 domains: astrophysics, nanoscience, and the neuroscience. Now, the second topic is with respect to one of the very important regulatory institutions in India, and that is Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, right? Now, this is a statutory body. It was constituted under the TRAI Act of 1997, that is Telecom Regulatory Authority of India Act. Now, this acts as a regulator of the telecommunications sector in India, right? You must have heard that the spectrum pricing or any issues related to that, or the advisories being given to the telecom companies, internet service providers. You must have seen the sort of advisories which TRI gave on the net neutrality principles. So it is in accordance to that. So it consists of a chairperson and not more than 2 full-time members and not more than 2 part-time members. Now, see, please understand that it is not completely a full autonomous body. It is controlled by the central government, and it is appointed by the central government. As I said, it is not completely an independent telecom regulator, and under section 25 of the TRAI Act, it has been said that the central government can pass any order and the TRAI has to abide by it. What are the functions? Making recommendations on various issues related to telecommunication sector, general administrative and regulatory functions, fixing tariffs and rate for the telecom services, any other functions entrusted by the central government. So the recommendations made by the TRAI, as I said, they are not binding, and ultimately the government can interfere anywhere. Now, the TRAI Act was amended in 2000 so as to provide another mechanism for dispute resolution. So we had got the TDSET, Telecom Dispute Settlement Authority Tribunal, right? So appellate tribunal, sorry. So it actually, this now looks into the sort of grievances between the regulator and the internet service providers or different telecom suppliers, right? And also to hear and dispose of sort of appeals against the decision of TRAI. The next topic is with respect to the Press Club of India. Now, this is one of the organizations which deal in the sort of the enhancing the journalistic freedom in India, right? So it is Association of Journalists and Media Professionals, led by an annually elected executive body, which consists of the president, the secretary, then you have got the other members also. So as of 2021, it has around 4,200 active members, and it is the largest sort of organization which is responsible for journalistic freedom, right? So it advocates for press freedom and journalistic principles. It is located in New Delhi. See, UPSC has been in a habit of asking such questions related to these bodies, however small they are, but they are important for the exam. Next topic is with respect to a very important India Middle East corridor, right? IMEC corridor. So it has come into the news. See, the framework is that it is a infrastructure framework which is being proposed to connect India with that of the Europe and through the Middle East, right? So we have got this map. You can see that you have got India, and it is being connected with Jebel Ali in UAE. Then we have got Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, Haifa in Israel. Then we have got Harad in Saudi Arabia, Al Gufayrat in UAE, and then Al Haditha in Saudi Arabia, and finally in Piraeus port in Greece, right? So it tries to connect through land, sea, and rail links, right? So it is a proposed comprehensive transportation network, and it forms a part of PGGI, that is Partnership for Growth and Infrastructure and Investment, right? Now this is a sort of a US-led initiative and the G7-led initiative, which tries to focus upon investing in these economies, developing economies, especially in the context of the infrastructure development. Now, the proposed IMEC corridor will consist of railroad, ship-to-rail networks, road transport routes extending across 2 corridors. The first is the East Corridor, that is connecting India to the Arabian Gulf, and the second is the Northern Corridor, that is connecting to the Gulf to the Europe part. It also includes an electricity cable, a hydrogen pipeline, and a high-speed data cable. India, US, Saudi Arabia, UAE, European Union, Italy, France, and Germany are sort of key members of this. However, the IMEC is facing challenges primarily due to the conflict we are having in this region, that is the Israel-Palestine conflict. So the prospects of IMEC, they don't look good as of now. So that is what you have to learn about. I hope you enjoyed the session. All the best. Thank you.